Well, Peter, it's nice to be back interviewing you again in a very interesting spot here.
It is indeed. Wonderful spot.
Maybe we can get into a little bit more possibly with where we're at and why this may be significant. But what I would like to do in your journey, we learned how you came out of atheism. You lost your atheism by reading The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins.
That's right.
And very powerful on how God actually was orchestrating and using that to bring you to himself. But you came from the point of losing your atheism, and what is next? I mean, okay, so maybe there's a higher power, maybe there's a God. What happened next?
The thing is, I did not know. I was lost, really. I had no idea what to do next. I got this idea that first of all, being an atheist would not do it anymore. And then the other thing that struck me, something to do with consciousness has to be spiritual. So I'd got those things there, but of course, only nowadays, looking back, I could see that it's not at all obvious that somebody who loses their atheism is going to find faith in the God who created all things and saves us in Jesus Christ. It's not at all obvious. In fact, it was almost like going from the frying pan into the fire. But I didn't know it at the time. I simply started looking and following whatever turned up.
Okay, so at this point, I remember you telling me that you, as you were just open to the possibility of more than just biological evolution without a creator, you had told me someone sought you out.
Yes, somebody sought me out. I moved, I had to earn some money, I had to get a job that involved eventually moving from one city to another. Went to the city of Bristol in the west of England. I knew nobody. And one moment I was sitting in a cafe eating a sandwich, drinking a cup of coffee, and in through the door of the cafe came a lady, maybe in the late 40s, early 50s, I suppose. She came in very purposefully. She walked straight up to where I was sitting, looked straight at me, and said very clearly, very slowly, "I have been sent to find you." And she gave me the address and the time and day of meetings which she was part of. So I got that. I got the address. I got a day when they would meet and what time. And I actually went along. Did
she mention to you what this was about?
No,
at all?
Not at all. Not at all.
And how soon after that did you go to this meeting?
Probably just a few days. Fairly short after meeting, the lady came. I wouldn't say I met her. She came up and gave me this message, or this saying that she'd come to find me. I went to the meeting. I found it. It was in a building not far from the center of Bristol. And there was a building which was where the Oddfellows used to meet. That's a kind of Freemasonry. It's not identical, but there's a great deal in common with it. And there they had a meeting room also for this group, which turned out to be called the Atlanteans. And many of you would say, oh, the lost continent of Atlantis. Exactly right, they were called the Atlanteans after the lost continent of Atlantis.
Wow.
The group was following messages which they were receiving from a medium, that's somebody who is in contact with a spirit which is giving messages through them. They're the medium through which a spirit will communicate. So there was a medium and giving these messages which were then put into writing, and the spirit was claiming to be a priest from the lost continent of Atlantis with some teachings for humanity to help humanity from avoiding the destruction that had come upon Atlantis. So this was to give messages for humanity, what to do in order to avoid some terrible destruction, and then to follow the kind of wisdom guided by these spirits, one of which was communicating through a medium with this group that I was now.
How many people were in this group meeting that you went to?
This particular one, which would have been one of many small groups similar to it. So this is just one of the groups, and this group had about 10 members. That these would be youngish sort of people. I was probably the youngest of all, but late 20s, early 30s, the leader of the group, say probably late 40s, early 50s, as the leader.
Wow, that's very interesting. I'm curious, I want to go back. So the woman said she was sent to find you. How did she even know who you were? Did you ask them how they knew who you were?
No. This is something where you might say, oh, it's just a technique. You know, to get a new member into a group like this, you could just go and say, oh, I've been sent to find you, and that would single you out and make you feel good. This was different. She had no idea that I was there, you know, who I was. She didn't know I was. She'd never met me before. I was new to the town, and I was sitting on my own in a cafe, and she came directly to that cafe, directly to the doorway of the cafe, walked straight up to my table and said that directly to me. This suggests to me that there was something actually in the spirit world going on there where I was a target.
Yeah.
And through groups who were practicing contact with spirit beings, that somehow they were networking and that I was genuinely a target.
Because you were open to now the spiritual realm.
I certainly was. It would connect with certain things from my past, which I won't go into, but with things which I've learned since about my upbringing. There would be particular reasons why they might have singled me out.
Interesting. So after this first meeting and you're learning about the Atlanteans and when they're talking about connecting with spirits, what did you think? Were you scared? Like, what is this group? Or were you fascinated by what you heard?
I was fascinated. This was clearly people who were talking as people who knew what they were talking about and that this was something very real for them. The atmosphere in the room was sweet. Very, very nice feeling in the room. The relationships among the people was very nice. They were very supportive of one another, very friendly, cheerful, nothing at all that would make you suspect there was anything other than something good, of genuine people who were looking to develop things which would also be good.
So at this point, did they have like weekly meetings that you began to attend, or how did that work?
Yeah, there were weekly meetings. They wouldn't all be present each time, because not everybody can turn up every week to a group, but generally you would see the same people there. Every week they would invite outside speakers regularly to give you an idea about what I did not find weird at that time. I did not find this weird. They invited one speaker, I remember, who claimed to have had a previous incarnation on another planet when he was a different life form. So he gave his talk about his experiences on another planet as it being a different life form.
That's interesting. So that would almost, you could see some of some almost Buddhism or Hinduism, the reincarnation type
certainly
belief that he believed he was coming from another life on a different planet.
On a different planet. Yeah, so definitely reincarnation. And so you've got a group here which I didn't know about reincarnation. So I came to a group which believed in it. And certainly this particular person had a form of reincarnation which included, changing from one life form to another.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, into this time that you're with this group, how long were you attending these meetings? Was it continuous for months?
Oh, just months, yeah. In fact, this is interesting. I could have become part of the group. I broke away from it, what I thought would be a temporary break, because I went traveling around the world, backpacking through Southeast Asia and then on some. So I was away for a year, but I was expecting to be a part of the group even on return. I kept in contact with the group while I was actually traveling overseas. So although I was only with them for a relatively short time, the things which happened were significant. There are just one or two details that perhaps I should mention about the group and what they were doing, and how that might then not have struck me as being so important as it does now, looking back, and what I've learned afterwards.
So you're in this time you were meeting with the group, they're talking about contacting spirit beings or mediums of some sort. Can you go into a little bit more of that? They're teaching about actually contacting.
So regularly at meetings, they would have what they would call a guided meditation. I'm not saying that that's always going to be a negative thing to do, but here it was very necessary for them to do guided meditations, and the leader for the guided meditations had a particular goal in view. The way is to get somebody searching and expecting to find things. As they're guided through a meditation, to start imagining places, particular things they might be doing, they were then expected to find either an object or begin to look out and see something that was alive there in the scene. The purpose for that was to introduce those who were then opening themselves up and searching, opening themselves up to what would become their spirit guide. That is, to allow themselves to become friendly with something they would meet during the meditations, something which wasn't part of their own self, but which was coming to them during the meditation and would make itself visible to them somehow, some way that they would then find this would become a friend to them, and that they could connect with. And this friend they would call a spirit guide, which would then be part of the spiritual life development of the person from then on.
Now, did they teach that each individual person had their own spirit guide, their own personal spirit guide, or was it a one spirit for the group, or how did they teach that?
Yeah, they would want each person to get their own personal one.
Okay. What was involved within the contact of this? Was there any ritual practices that would open your mind up to this? Was there any kind of foods or anything that you put into your body that would open your mind up to this, or was it simply gathering in a group and then calling out to this? How are you supposed to open yourself up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in a very simple way, if you've got somebody guiding the group who themselves has contact with spirits, if the group itself is based on teachings from a medium, you're already in the context where spirits are going to be taking an interest in the people in the group. The only difficulty for the spirits is how to make themselves known to the people in the group in such a way that they would feel welcomed and become a friend of that person. So that takes time, and I was only in the group for a short time, and so just at the very beginning I was beginning to find that there was something that I would come across during the meditation. I would see something or meet something coming towards me, but it was only towards the end, just before leaving England to go overseas, that I started actually getting contact back home in my own room, where something would come into the room, and I knew it was there, and I didn't make a decision to actually invite it into me to become a part of my life. But I was already having contact with something, but I traveled overseas, got away from the group, and that was just around the time when I could have chosen to have a spirit guide myself.
I see. So in the meditation groups, I'm trying to get my mind around how the New Age movement works, which I'm assuming this is very much part of the New Age. Would they call themselves a New Age group, or they had their own names like the Atlanteans? And
very good, very good. This is something which I think is helpful to get very specific and clear. There'd be lots of things that people do who have already joined a New Age group. Lots of things they do, but the New Age itself, we're talking about a theory of evolution by steps of advancement of humankind. And this particular one is talking about ages lasting for approximately 2,000 years and moving according to the signs of the zodiac. And so the New Age movement is actually talking about humanity about to enter into a new age, the age of Aquarius, who is the water carrier. This is what they would say. Now, interestingly, the first 2,000 years that we think about, the previous 2,000 years, was Pisces, which represented Christianity. And so they believed that Christianity was about to come to an end. That would be the end of Christianity, and humanity was about to evolve into something beyond Christianity, the new age of Aquarius.
Okay. So I'm interested, just going a little further into the meditations, because I'm familiar with Eastern meditation that is practiced within Hinduism and Buddhism. And I know in Eastern meditation, it's very much trying to empty the mind. And of course, we know Buddha, it was trying to dissolve yourself of any kind of pleasure. And so trying to just completely make your mind empty of anything. Is that what you're doing in this kind of meditation? Or you're trying to meditate upon a spirit? Are you calling on the spirit within yourself? Like, are you asking whatever is there, reveal yourself to me, show yourself? Or are you simply, or is it the Eastern meditation where you're just emptying the mind?
Good. So it's neither of those.
Okay.
So this is, when you have a group leader who is guiding the meditation, they would be suggesting to you things that you should imagine. So you might imagine yourself in a particular scene, and then you think to yourself, I can reach out and touch, I can see the colors in this scene, I can touch the objects in the scene, there might be a breeze, there might be something to smell. So you put yourself in a scene which you've been asked to by somebody who's guiding you, okay. And then you'd be asked to imagine yourself moving through the scene, or imagining something coming into the scene, or the scene changing slightly, and you're using your imagination to then be beginning to look for things that would begin to appear which you didn't ask to appear. Something from outside is going to begin to appear inside what you're imagining.
Okay. That's interesting, because I've always thought of that meditation as similar to more the Buddhist meditation, but it's different.
It's different, yeah.
Okay. So from this point, you are in this group, you are almost to the point you believe of being contacted by the spirit guide.
Yes.
Did you have any reservations, like something that was in your heart that was like, this feels dark, this feels like I'm going too far?
I think it was more the sense that I'd suddenly discovered that there was something there that was wanting to come, not just to me, but to be actually in somehow wanting to come inside me, or in some way to be permanently having some kind of influence or power over me, and I wanted to postpone the decision. That would be all. I wasn't really sure, but I certainly was clear this is something real, and I just didn't make the step of actually inviting it in. I kept it, I deliberately did not open myself to it completely.
Okay, so at that point, then what was next for you?
So, yeah. So the thing to note is that I was still not sure what to do about searching. I thought I would maintain with the group. So when you say what's next, it just happened that I was invited, in fact by my own mother, to go traveling overseas, backpacking through Southeast Asia. And so actually what happened next was all to do with what happened while going overseas and traveling. And now all kinds of other influences and experiences are going to come in the sense of things I'd never thought of or desired even. Things happen while you're traveling which you don't expect. And so I was then opened up to both other things which were from the occult, really, and from this kind of world of the spirits. I did make friends with one or two people while traveling who were into this kind of world and lent me books about it and talked to me about it. I did get interested in Hinduism and Buddhism. After all, I started the traveling in India and then through Nepal. But at the same time, God was able to introduce me to Christians while I was traveling around the world too. And so there was this going on all the time, day by day. Which route was I going to go in? And I didn't know.
Now, before we get into the actual journey that you began to go on around the world, you had mentioned someone named Findhorn.
Yes.
That I wanted you to expound on a little bit more.
Yeah.
Before you took the journey and you were still a part of this group and opening yourself up to the New Age movement. So who is this Findhorn and why was it significant?
So Findhorn's a place.
Okay.
It's a place in the north of Scotland.
Okay,
Most people would have heard of Inverness and Loch Ness up in Scotland.
Yes.
This is not far away from there. A bit further along the coast, actually on the sea coast. Findhorn would have been a place on the map that nobody would have heard of or visited, except that few people interested in contacting spirits and living close to nature moved there in caravans, I think, to just live a kind of lifestyle away from it all. And the spirits that they got into contact with caused them to become the center of this movement for the age of Aquarius. Of all the places in the world, when the Vatican produced a document about this movement 20 years ago, Findhorn is one of 3 places in the world which gets special mention. And Findhorn, from this group of people who were just living away from it all, doing a little bit of gardening and growing vegetables for themselves, but were also contacting spirits during different meditations and mediumship. This group went global. The importance of this would be how people were drawn to go there. They would be taught how to get their spirit guide. This is what they were teaching me with the Atlanteans. People go to Findhorn, they do an introductory program, 5 days in which almost for sure they're going to get their spirit guide there, but also in which they're introduced, for those who want to go as deep as they want to, into the writings of a lady called Alice Bailey, whose books I know. I've been to Findhorn since, and so I've been to their bookshop, and I know that the works of this lady called Alice Bailey are available. Alice Bailey was somebody who was in contact with a spirit, and through Alice Bailey various things were revealed about what the New Age is all about, which is the creation of a one world government, of politicians who themselves have contacted their own spirit guides. These spirit guides are a hierarchy that is going up in steps to more and more powerful spirits, and at the top they actually say that Lucifer is at the top. Now this sounds so weird, and I've actually got, and we can actually bring up on screen, I'm sure, some screenshots of some of the literature by the people, including Alice Bailey and her forerunners in a group known as the Theosophical Society, who actually had their publishing house used to be called Lucifer Publishing, and where
that's crazy.
It sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, probably because even as Christians reading the Bible, we think that the account in Genesis of Adam and Eve and the serpent in the garden sounds too far-fetched, and we say, oh, that was a long time ago. But actually, the very same temptation is with us today. The very same temptation.
It's true. The temptation to follow the serpent rather than
follow the serpent,
Creator.
which will bring you a message saying, why don't you try this? It won't harm you. In fact, it'll make you wise.
In fact, maybe you'll be like God.
In fact, you'll find out that actually you yourself are like God.
Wow, that's amazing. So this Findhorn place has a very significant role within. You can almost see this almost in Bible prophecy, almost. I mean, not the specific place, but just and this new age leading into a one world government system, and of course we know the rise of the Antichrist, and so that place at the time when you were young, did the place play a significant role in you, or was that something that you came to understand more later in your journey?
It came later. It happened to be the leader of the group there of the Atlanteans, the one who'd come to the cafe and said she'd come to find me, she herself regularly went to Findhorn. As well as Findhorn, there were other national meeting places in the UK, but around the world there'd also been national meeting places where all like-minded people and groups of people who are into this channeling spirits, and at the same time getting a teaching from the spirits that they could channel energies. And so they would do their own kind of meditations in which they would channel energies. This would be energies which were being channeled to them from these higher spirits, this hierarchy of spirits, and this would be in order to make major changes in society, major changes. I remember that one time she said that at the national meeting of these groups, they also had Buddhist monks going. Some of those monks were actually from the Buddhist monastery, which I had been to stay at in the south of England when I began to think about becoming a Buddhist. That from that very monastery, some of those monks were taking part in the New Age gatherings to channel energy.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting, Peter. I think it's kind of significant, the place that we are sitting right now and sitting above, and some things that happen on this island just behind us at one of the hotels here. And I don't know if we should mention that right now, or I think it's just interesting. We know on this very island that there is some people who are very much into the New Age movement. I know it's very prevalent in the culture here. There's a lot of I'm wondering if the cup readings that are being done here, and I know that within the cup readings they're trying to imagine, right? Seeing if something in their mind will come, some sort of picture. It reminds me of what you were talking about, the meditations within this group you were in. Do you want to expound on that?
Coffee cup reading. You mentioned what's the connection between coffee cup reading and other ways that people are contacting the spirits? Is it about coffee cup reading? Well, yes, it is. And thinking also, it's the movie that people have seen of Harry Potter or read the books where he learns teacup reading. Very many people will have done this, maybe either as a party game or just thinking, well, this is just fun, or watching somebody else do it, that they've got friends who do it, and thinking, oh, well, who cares, and I don't really believe in that kind of thing. But it's very prevalent. What is actually happening there? It doesn't matter what people do. It doesn't matter whether it's a coffee cup, because the coffee cup's not going to tell them anything. The coffee grounds at the bottom of the cup are not going to tell them anything. All of these techniques, the person has to look, but without understanding. They have to suspend their own understanding as they look at something, as they not quite daydream, but almost on the state of daydreaming. Suspending their own understanding, they look until they begin to, first of all, imagine that they're seeing something. Then they say, oh yes, I'm looking into these coffee grounds and I can see an aeroplane. Or I'm looking into these coffee grounds and I can see a hat. And then they will turn to the person and say, oh, you're going to go on a journey overseas by aeroplane. And when you get to your destination, you'll meet somebody wearing a hat and you'll marry them.
I see.
Now, unfortunately, I'm giving you actually a real example that was told to me, and unfortunately led to the breakup of a marriage. Oh, wow. So just to say that a coffee cup reading game, people hear something like that, going on a journey. Well, you could say that to anybody, and sometime in the next few months, most of us will be. And then you're going to meet somebody wearing a hat. Well, what's strange about that? And then you're going to marry them. something is going into their mind that when they actually go on their journey and they see somebody wearing a hat, and if one of those little spirits that they've been calling on in order to do this, the actual coffee cup reading is actually inviting any spirits that might be there. Hopefully they're not there, but if they were, they would try and facilitate the meeting up with somebody that could lead to a relationship not willed by God, which could actually be very destructive in that person's life. That's basically it. You need something to begin with, which is an actual invitation to spirits to say, I'm calling on spirits, whether it's reading coffee, reading tea, reading somebody's palm, doing astrology, looking at something which doesn't have anything there to tell you anything, until your mind is in that half sleep, half wake, not understanding, until all of a sudden something is shown to you and you see something, and then you say, I can make sense of this, and you speak out a message. From the moment of attempting to find out something from doing something, even if you thought it was not serious at the beginning, what you're doing is getting information or getting a prediction about the future, and that is an invitation to spirits to come. After that, it just depends whether you're wanting to go further or not. If there is a spirit there, or if something is predicted or shown to you which turns out to be true, you're likely to get hooked and say, I want to do this again. It happened, it was true. Then, if a spirit becomes your friend by giving you good things at the beginning, it's likely to get very attached to you, and then it can introduce more powerful spirits, demons, and that can then draw you really as far as you're unable to stop yourself from going.
I see. So, Peter, this has been good to come up here and film here and in this place where actually this was a temple to Aphrodite's. We know
yes.
There's so much on this island, so much background to the demonic realm that even is on this island. But I think this point in your story, we will end, and the next part of your story will get into your journey into Buddhism.
Yes, I think that's right, because there has to be a way of stepping beyond this Atlantean group into something where I'm still continuing a search, and it has to be a stepping stone towards eventually a place where Jesus himself will start to come into my life and eventually persuade me that he's real. And yeah.